I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Hello, welcome to the home series. My name is Andy, this is Stuart. Welcome. The purpose of the home series in its third episode is to communicate to the St. John's family some of the changes that have happened behind the scenes, all the conversations, all the endless Zoom calls, all the breakout rooms, to give you guys the cheat sheet and what has been happening. Now, we're in our third week, but we thought we would recap some of the stuff that we talked about last week. So the first thing that we said is that we would make the preach significantly shorter. And in doing so, we would bolster learning streams and make learning streams one of the main ways which we teach people, and a commitment to go deeper than we ever have before. Also, what we're saying, because we're doing that, we're able to get different people and different voices at the table. So we're going to make it more accessible for young people to be part of the service and part of the church, and also bolstering the voices of the young and the old and people who just don't get that much airtime on a Sunday. More than that, what we're saying is that we want to plant churches, and we are fanatical about doing so. And then more than that is what we're saying is that online services give us a great opportunity now for us to be able to do church within our localities. So today, we are heading to the precipice of the promised land. We are just on the edge, and this is where we find Moses in our story today. So Stuart is going to read out of a slightly smaller Bible this week and expound the scriptures to us.
Slightly smaller Bible. Then Moses went up to Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab and climbed Pisgah Peak, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead as far as Dan, all the land of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, extending to the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, the Jordan Valley with Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to Moses, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have now allowed you to see it with your own eyes, but you will not enter the land."
So Moses is on the precipice of all that he's about to encounter, and then God says to him, you can see it, you've taken the people this far, but it's not quite for you. And then within that same movement, Martin Luther King uses this Exodus narrative, and on the night before he's assassinated, says these words to the assembled masses. In fact, he puts himself very much in this story, that he has been to the mountaintop, and he has looked over and he has seen the promised land.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Martin's words look to this great home that he wants to find. In this series, the past 3 weeks, we have been looking at what that word means, home. And today we want to unpack that more fully as what we believe the word home means for this particular congregation, this time, and this moment.
I love the way that God gave us that word for this series, home. It's not just about a moving out and expanding in a kingdom sense. It's about finding home. It's about finding ourselves fully in the middle of what God has for this church. It's about finding a place, a physical place that we as a congregation in Linlithgow can name as home. And we're not the only ones that are on a journey towards home. The New Well, which I've been part of since its inception, is looking for a place to call home as well. And we're just going to ask Heather just now just to share a little bit about that journey.
Well, I guess for an awful lot of us, the plans we had in January and the reality that we're living with now are two very different things. And for the New Well, that's absolutely where we're at. In January, we were going full steam ahead, drawing up plans with an architect for a building just off the high street that we expected by now to be getting keys for. We thought the refurb would be done over the spring and summer, and we were really excited about getting into it and getting on and expanding the work of the New Well. But unfortunately, as a direct consequence of COVID restrictions and limitations, that has not happened. We will not be able to use that building at all, and we're back to square one, looking for a home for the New Well. And it's really been very disappointing, and it feels like a lot of the stuff that we'd moved forward on has had to stop abruptly. But it's not all bad news, thankfully. We've had some really exciting things that we've been able to move ahead with during lockdown, and perhaps lockdown has given us an opportunity to do things that we wouldn't have otherwise done. So we've been able to apply for grant funding, and we were successful in getting money from West Lothian Council, which has let us provide counselling for free for people, and we've been able to pay the counsellors sessional work so that they can provide extra counselling for people most in need of that. The CAP stuff as well, we had done a pilot for the money management course, and we were hoping to get that going kind of March, April time. Again, that was kind of kiboshed with the COVID stuff, but we have now started having conversations about developing CAP work and setting up a job club. So we will be able to, with the restrictions that are currently in place, we can use Union Road for education purposes. So that means we can run courses. So we're hoping very soon to get some CAP stuff up and running. We're actually looking for people who would like to train to run a job club for us under CAP. So if anybody would be interested in getting involved in running a job club, proper training and support will be given. So really, in summary, the main thing that we're looking for is a home, a place that we can be based, a place where we can be visible, hopefully on the high street. And there are various opportunities around at the moment, and we're starting preliminary chat with various people to see if there's something that would suit us. We want to be able to have a cafe, we want to have space for more counselling and all the other things that we're doing.
Now, there was a time, believe it or not, where Keith Shaw had hair. And in that particular moment when Keith Shaw had hair, he was part of a church planting team down in Yeovil. And he told me this week, and we're just going to hear the great clip now, of the excitement he had when he encouraged people to find a sense of home in church, but also to leave the mothership, to leave the bigger church that they had in Yeovil, to plant out smaller congregations with a team of people.
It's a really exciting period of my life. I think it was one of the first times that we ever remember as an eldership team hearing God together. We actually got a verse from Matthew 5 verse 14, a city on a hill can't be hidden. And yet we recognised as a church we were doing a very, very good job of hiding. And through that, as we began to pray and seek God, we hit upon the idea of planting out congregations. So we're very much going for a cell congregation celebration model. So we set about actually 3 young couples and an elderly couple who are actually younger than I am now, but they seemed really old to us at the time, to actually spend 6 months praying and preparing the ground. And went ahead and we planted, and we took our time out, but we started doing creative things. We prayer walked the area. We took worship out on the streets. We leafleted the houses. And we started with 50 people. That included children. In fact, everything that was breathing we counted. We started with 50 people. And within a year to 18 months, that 50 had grown to 120 people. It really was like an adventure for me. Suddenly, my Christianity wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real and alive. And there was a real buzz about the place. And actually, people, including our own kids, couldn't wait to get to church on a Sunday morning, and because you knew that something else was going to happen.
So in the first week we spoke to you about leaving the academy, something that was heard from the elders, and that we were just being honest with telling you that dialogue that had happened. But as also as well behind the scenes, one of the things that we've been talking about is, what would it be like for St. John's to have its permanent home of its own? What if home for St. John's Linlithgow looked like a place where everybody in Linlithgow could do church together? What would it look like for St. John's to have a home that really is a home, a hub that resources the church plants, that also bolsters a commitment to Linlithgow, but also serves the community? What would it look like to have a one-stop salvation stop right in the heart of Linlithgow? And we believe that it's possible. And not only that we believe it is possible, there is individuals within the church family who believe that it is possible. And a small property team has begun to develop behind the scenes to look at what could it look like for St. John's to have a permanent home together. And they are Ricky Steedman, they are Heather Bagarney, they are Billy Fraser, they are Stephen Rogers, they are Amanda Campbell, they are me, and they are Stuart. And those people are having conversations right now at viable places that could host us, that we could find home.
I think the biggest thing for me, and the biggest theological journey I have been on over the last 10 or 15 years, is that church is not an event. Church is not something that we come to. Church is who we are. And so it doesn't make sense for us to have a space that is only available to us on a Sunday morning. We want to be church throughout the week to people. We want a community space where people can come and drink coffee with us. We want a place where we can be visible all throughout the week. That is what we long for. That is what home looks like for us.
Now, we're at a unique point here at St. John's. We are on the precipice of things that are unknown, that nobody knows what the world is looking like in 12 months' time. Nobody knows what the world looks like in 12 minutes' time. But we're excited about what the future holds. And there's this iconic moment within Scottish history where Robert the Bruce kills his adversary, the person who was his rival, John the Red Comyn, in Dunfermline Abbey, and then he gets his friend, the Bishop of Glasgow, to swear him in as king and to coronate him at Scone Palace. And it's only him and his wife and his pals that are there. And he turns to his wife and he says, "Be glad, for we are now king and queen over Scotland." And his wife turns to him and says, "We are king and queen as boys are made in summer games." In other words, you are king over nothing unless people follow. And the proof is in the pudding about this, right? The proof is in the pudding in the sense of, you might have heard before leaders say things that haven't come true and haven't happened. You also as well, when we talk about property or home or finding a sense of a permanent home in Linlithgow, that might raise up in you questions of the past. It might make you feel things about where things haven't worked well before. And it's the same true for church planting. And we've got an opportunity now to do something new. But it only works if you guys come with us.
Earlier on in the year, we went over our values in the AGM report, and these values were not something that were dreamed up. These were values that have been in the church for 200 years. These were values of being about the kingdom and seeing the kingdom of God expand in our community. The values were about nurturing each other and discipleship and discipling each other. And the third one was about pursuing Jesus and worshipping Jesus. And that is what we have always been about, and that is what we will always be about. And there's this brilliant verse in Exodus 33 where Moses comes to that point where he realizes that the most important thing of all of this is not the promised land. The most important thing is being in the presence of God. He says this: "If you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favourably on me and on your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all other people on the earth." For Moses, he didn't get into the promised land in a physical sense. What higher promised land is there? It's not a physical space. It's a relationship, and a permanent relationship with Jesus.
And as part of that, going there together, we want to make it easy as possible to do so. Now, we're in crazy times because of COVID, but one thing that we have released today is a little PDF notebook, a handbook of all the things that we've said, all the main points that we've said over the past 3 weeks. And as part of that too, we want to invite you as well to a vision and prayer night on September the 20th at 7 o'clock on Zoom, where we're going to be encouraging people to pray into the things that we've heard, to allow people to ask questions, to allow this thing to be tested, but also as well for people to just hear from God for themselves. We realise that we don't want to do something that's hegemonic, something that is top down, but we want to bring people with us, and we want to go on this journey together. Now, the most vital point that we would like to reclaim, and the biggest disruption of them all, and the biggest mountain that we could ever be led to, or the greatest eschatological hope of a promised land that we could ever find, is in this point here. I believe more than ever at this time with COVID that we must, as people, as a church, as a nation, reclaim the radical belief of the person of Jesus. Jesus in this homecoming meal, the Passover feast, where Jews remembered the stories of old, places himself at the center of it. And now we're going to make time at the very end of this talk to do communion together. Jesus at this Passover meal places himself in the very heart of it and says these words: "Do this in remembrance of me." Now, he's not there talking about just drinking and not just eating bread. But what could the "do this" really mean? See, immediately afterwards, Jesus goes to Golgotha and he sacrifices himself. He pours out himself. His body is broken. And I wonder if the "do this" that is required is the "do this" that is required in all of us. That we, like Jesus, must be poured out. That we, like Jesus, must be broken. That we, as people, must serve one another, must serve our communities, must bring about self-sacrificial love to these people. Now, I'm not saying today that we're going to do communion through a different context of thinking about sin, but I want, as we think about the remission of our sin too, let us think also, what could we do? How could we break ourselves? How could we pour out ourselves for the betterment of others, for his gospel and his kingdom? So on the night where Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread and he broke it. And he said, "This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me."
And in the same way, he said, "This is my blood poured out for you. Drink in remembrance of me." God, I thank you for this meal. I thank you we can remember you. Jesus, I thank you that this is all about you and it's all for you. God, I thank you for this home series. I thank you that we can start to talk about what you've got for us and we can start and go on a journey together. God, we realise that we're in an Exodus time at the moment. We're in a desert time. We're in unprecedented circumstances. But we look forward to the promised land. And we thank you that you are leading us. And above all, God, we want to be in your presence. And we want to seek after you. And we want to be known as a people who seek after you. So help us, God, as we look into the future. Help us as we reach out into our community and bring your kingdom. Help us as we nurture each other and disciple each other and look after each other. And help us, God, and show us how to be in your presence and how to worship you for your glory. Amen.
Martin Luther King, on the night before he died, says these words, "But it really don't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And I might not get there with you, but what I want you to know is that tonight, we as a people will make it to the promised land. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, let us give all our journeys to God."